IELTS Speaking Test. Theme: Learning and Education. Part 1. Introduction and Interview. Let's talk about learning new things. Question 1. What's something new you've learned recently outside of your formal studies or work?
That's an interesting starting point. Recently, I've been teaching myself basic woodworking. I bought a few tools and started with simple projects like a bookshelf. It's a far cry from my desk job, and that's precisely the appeal. It's tactile and requires a completely different kind of focus.
Do you prefer to learn through instruction, through hands-on experience, or by teaching yourself? Why?
I'd say I'm a hybrid learner. I value a strong foundational framework from instruction, perhaps a good manual or an introductory video, but true mastery, for me, only comes from hands-on tinkering, from making mistakes and iterating. Teaching myself is rewarding, but having that initial guidance prevents frustration.
How has your approach to learning new skills changed since you were a child?
Profoundly. As a child, learning was more passive, more about absorption and imitation. Now, it's an active, metacognitive process. I'm much more strategic. I'll deconstruct a skill into sub-skills, seek out specific resources, and deliberately practice the difficult parts. I'm also far more patient with the plateau phases of learning.
Let's move to teachers. What personal qualities do you think are essential for a truly exceptional teacher?
Beyond subject expertise, which is a given, I'd pinpoint 2 qualities. First, empathy, the ability to diagnose not just what a student doesn't know, but why they are struggling to grasp it. Second, intellectual humility. The best teachers I've had are those who are visibly curious themselves, who model the process of inquiry rather than just dispensing answers.
Can you recall a teacher who had a significant impact on you? What was it about their method that was so effective?
Absolutely. My university philosophy lecturer. Her method was Socratic to the core. She rarely lectured, instead she'd pose a deceptively simple question and then guide the discussion, challenging our assumptions. It was less about learning what philosophers thought and more about learning how to think. She created an environment where intellectual risk-taking was safe.
Some believe the role of a teacher is to provide knowledge, while others see it as inspiring curiosity. What's your view?
I see that as a false dichotomy. In the information age, the mere provision of knowledge is of diminishing value. Therefore, the primary role must be to inspire curiosity and cultivate the tools to sate it: critical thinking, discernment, research skills. The knowledge then becomes something the student actively acquires, not passively receives.
Finally, a question about educational spaces. How important do you think the physical environment is for effective learning?
It's more important than we often credit. A sterile, rigid environment can subconsciously signal that learning is a passive, standardized process. In contrast, flexible spaces with natural light, areas for collaboration, and for quiet reflection, can foster creativity and ownership of the learning process. It should be an environment that supports the pedagogy, not contradicts it.
Do you think traditional classrooms will become obsolete in the future?
In their current rigid form, very possibly. The model of rows facing a single authority figure is rooted in an industrial paradigm. I foresee their evolution into flexible learning hubs, spaces that facilitate project-based collaboration, individual research using technology, and mentorship rather than just one-directional instruction.
Thank you. Now I'm going to give you a topic for part 2. You have 1 minute to prepare and can make notes. All right, please begin speaking. You have up to 2 minutes.
I'd like to talk about the time I decided to learn a new language, specifically Japanese, as an adult. The motivation was a combination of deep interest in the culture and a professional opportunity that involved liaising with Japanese partners. The difficulty was multifaceted. Firstly, the writing systems, hiragana, katakana, and particularly kanji, were completely alien, a visual and conceptual challenge unlike anything in Indo-European languages. Secondly, the syntax is profoundly different, with the verb at the end of the sentence, which required rewiring my instinctive thought patterns. My approach was methodical yet immersive. I started with a structured online course to build grammar and vocabulary foundations. Simultaneously, I created total immersion for myself. I changed my phone's language to Japanese, listened to podcasts during my commute, and attempted to read simple manga. I also found a language exchange partner for weekly conversation practice, which was crucial. The obstacles were significant. The main one was hitting the intermediate plateau after about a year. The initial rapid progress stalled, and it felt like I was running in place. Maintaining motivation was tough. There was also the obstacle of time management, fitting consistent daily practice into an already busy schedule. This experience fundamentally altered my understanding of my own learning capabilities. It taught me that progress in deep learning isn't linear, it's a series of sprints, plateaus, and occasional breakthroughs. I learned the immense value of deliberate practice, focusing intensely on my weak points, like particle usage, rather than just enjoyable immersion. Most importantly, it gave me a deep sense of metacognitive awareness. I now understand how I learn best, which is a tool applicable to any future skill. It proved to me that with strategic persistence, the brain's neuroplasticity can be harnessed to master even the most daunting challenges.
IELTS Speaking Part 3. Discussion. We've been talking about learning. Now I'd like to discuss some broader issues related to education. There is a debate between a broad liberal arts education and a narrow, specialized vocational one. Which do you believe better serves individuals and society in the 21st century?
While vocational training has immediate economic appeal, I firmly believe a broad liberal arts education is more vital for long-term societal and individual thriving. The pace of technological change means specific technical skills can become obsolete rapidly. A liberal arts education, focusing on critical thinking, communication, ethical reasoning, and historical context, creates adaptable minds. It teaches people how to think, learn, and synthesize, which are the durable skills needed to navigate an uncertain future, innovate, and be engaged citizens. A society of only specialists lacks the connective tissue of shared cultural and civic understanding.
Some argue that the primary goal of education should be to foster critical thinking rather than to impart factual knowledge. To what extent do you agree?
I agree overwhelmingly, but with a crucial caveat. Critical thinking cannot happen in a factual vacuum. You need data, historical events, scientific principles, the stuff to think critically about. So the goal must be to teach facts in service of critical thinking. Rote memorization of disembodied facts is futile. But using facts to construct an argument, evaluate a source's credibility, or identify a logical fallacy, that's the synthesis we should aim for. The factual knowledge becomes the tool, not the end product.
With information instantly available online, how should the focus of classroom education shift? What becomes the new role of the teacher?
This is the central challenge of modern education. The classroom must shift from being the sole repository of information to a studio for sense-making. The focus should be on information literacy, how to discern credible sources, identify bias, and synthesize conflicting viewpoints. The teacher's role transforms from a sage on the stage to a guide on the side, a curator of resources, a facilitator of discussion, and a coach in critical analysis. They help students navigate the ocean of information, not just deliver a cup of water from it.
How can education systems better teach metacognition, that is, the awareness of one's own learning?
It has to be explicitly woven into the curriculum, not left to chance. This can be done through regular, structured reflection. For example, after a project, instead of just grading the outcome, have students write a process analysis. What strategy worked? Where did I get stuck and why? How would I approach it differently next time? Teaching students about different learning styles and study techniques, and having them experiment to find their own, makes the process visible. It turns the learner's gaze inward onto their own cognitive machinery.
What are the societal implications of the growing necessity for lifelong learning? Could it exacerbate social inequalities?
That's a profound concern. Lifelong learning is an imperative, but it's also a privilege. Those in precarious jobs, with limited time and resources, cannot easily access upskilling courses or pursue self-directed learning. This could create a vicious cycle where the knowledge gap widens, exacerbating existing socioeconomic disparities. The implication is that society, through government and employer funding, accessible community programs, and paid learning leave, must view lifelong learning as a public good, like healthcare, to prevent it from becoming another axis of inequality.
In an era of rapid change, how can we cultivate not just adaptability in learners, but also a sense of stability and ethical grounding?
That's the delicate balance, isn't it? I believe the stability must come from cultivating a strong internal compass, not from external unchanging circumstances. This is where the humanities are irreplaceable. By engaging with philosophy, literature, and history, students encounter enduring questions about justice, humanity, and purpose. This provides an ethical framework that remains stable even as technical skills shift. Educators can also foster resilience and a growth mindset, teaching that change is constant, but one's core values and capacity to learn can be a bedrock.
Thank you very much. That is the end of the IELTS speaking test.